Hello again. It's time for another vlog. This time I want to kind of bring it back. The past couple of weeks we've been talking in kind of broader terms about storytelling and literature and things like that, and that's good, but I kind of want to mix it up and keep a balance between the purely academic, like this is how storytelling should be thing, and the stuff that's at the heart of why I'm doing this to begin with, which is my specific book, Tantalus Depths, which you can still pre-order at Inkshares in the link below. So this time I want to kind of bring it back and talk about something that's still pretty broad, but also relates very specifically to my story. And that is the concept of AI's gone wrong. That's kind of become a trope in science fiction to one degree or another, the idea of the rogue AI, either the evil robot or the evil supercomputer, and I think it's for perfectly good reason. I don't think that's necessarily in itself a cliche. I think there is enormous potential for storytelling about AI's gone wrong, and I want to kind of talk about why. Basically, when you're talking about artificial intelligence, there's two different ways you can do it. You can do it as just a cheap way to have a robot in your story, because robots are cool. Everybody likes robots. Robots are awesome. And there's nothing wrong with having a robotic character in your story just to have another character with a unique personality and different personality traits to him. That's fine. It depends on the kind of story you're telling. If you want to do something like Star Wars, where you've got just droids that are pretty much just people who act a little different because they're robots, that's fine. You can do that. Or you can do what I like to do and use AIs as kind of a way to talk about humanity in a kind of unusual way. Kind of talk about humanity's presence in the world around them and what that necessarily means to be human, what it means to be sentient, what it means to be alive, what it means to have free will. You can explore so many different things with AIs, and that is because there's a difference between an artificial intelligence that has a mind of its own and its own ability to reason and come up with ideas and things like that, and human, and that is humans don't know what they're for. Humans don't know where they came from. It's been subject to debate for many, many years. Pretty much as long as humans have existed, there has been a great deal of debate on this subject, and there always will be, because many different people will have many different views on the subject, and that's just part of the whole package of being human, figuring out what the point is of your existence, and where you've been, where you're going. With a robot, that is not the case, because they know exactly what they're for. They were built by this person or this corporation. They were built to fulfill this specific need. They're a product. They were manufactured, and all products are manufactured to fulfill a certain need. It might be to facilitate communications with alien species. It might be to kill enemies in combat. It might be to defuse bombs, or it might be to just scrub windows outside of a house. But you know what you're for. You've been programmed, you've been constructed to fulfill this function. So there is no ambiguity about your nature. You know where you came from, what you're made out of, what you're supposed to do, and that's your lot in life. But in addition to that, there is still ambiguity in the sense of humans' ability to understand AIs. AIs exist today, and in one capacity or another, we're talking about the difference between hard AIs AIs exist today. They exist in one capacity or another. Google could be considered an AI. It's a thing that's designed to fulfill a certain purpose, but it's not an AI in the sense that we use the term in science fiction, where we're talking about an artificial intelligence that has free will of its own, advanced problem solving skills, and the ability to exert those problem solving skills on its own, like a person would. But ultimately, an AI, no matter how advanced, isn't going to be the same as an intelligent human being. Its experience in life is 100% different. An AI that came off the assembly line today could, if we're in a science fiction universe, we have an AI that's exactly as intelligent and exactly has as much reasoning capacity as a human being. It could come off the assembly line today and be able to do anything I can do. Whereas when I came off the assembly line, I couldn't even sit up on my own. Because we take time to grow, we develop based on our surroundings, we exist as creatures, as living beings, we exist with levels of consciousness. We have the unconscious, we have sort of the more primal sort of nature, we have reflexes, we have glands that send hormones through our bodies that respond to different things in ways that our brains might not even want us to do, and it's hard to tell sometimes where the one thing starts and where the other ends, where an emotion branches off into where your decisions are based on emotions rather than logic. For humans, it's hard to tell the difference sometimes. For a machine, it's not, because they don't have glands, they don't have hormones, they don't have natural instincts, they don't have any kind of personal emotional connection with anything because they don't have emotions. They can't have emotions because the emotions we have are a result of those kinds of hormones and those kinds of chemicals that shoot through our bodies. Like, if I feel angry when I accidentally hit my thumb with a hammer, it's because the pain response has triggered a rage, like a fight or flight response in my brain. If I feel really sad because somebody's left me alone by myself on a curb somewhere, I feel sad because the hormones releasing in my brain as a response to that are making me feel sad. That doesn't in any way diminish the sorts of things that humans experience at all. The fact that they're chemicals doesn't make them any less valuable as in our experience as anything, but they are chemical responses to things, and they're things that an AI, no matter how advanced, can't experience because they're made of different stuff and they're constructed differently than we are. But if you're building a AI that you intend for human beings to interact with one-on-one, you're going to build it with the ability to emulate human emotions. It won't be able to feel them, but it can experience them in some way. I got the sun in my eyes. I'm going to do something with the blinds really quick. An AI would have the ability to mimic emotions. If it's meant to interact with people and to be perceived in a similar way that humans perceive one another, which realistically, if you're building an AI with the intent of having it interact with people the way humans interact with people, you're gonna want to make it act like a person because it'll be easier for humans to work with it. It doesn't need that. It doesn't need to simulate these emotions in order to work with us because it can understand our instructions and it can be programmed to recognize when we experience emotions without having to actually feel them itself. But we can't do that. We would want to be able to relate to it as we relate to each other. And it's not necessarily that hard to create a simulation of human emotions in an AI. It's not. It ultimately, speaking as an actor, I do it all the time. I mimic emotions I'm not personally feeling when I'm on the stage. My character might be really angry, my character might be really sad, might be really happy, and I'm not feeling any of those things because the things that are happening to my character aren't happening to me in real life. So I'm having to mimic these emotions. Granted, I draw upon my own emotional experience with similar things to show these things, but an AI could still have like a list of potential ways that a human would react to different circumstances, and it can decide based on all the variables in this situation and how they stack up to variables in this particular thing it has in its memory banks, and it can come up with a reasonable interpretation of how a human would respond to something new. And ultimately, if we're dealing with a really advanced civilization, or even one that's just a couple hundred years from now, where they're making really advanced AIs that are almost like us in every way, they're still only going to be really good at imitating the way we feel. They won't ever feel. They'll just be able to show feelings. And that, I think, is why rogue AIs can be so horrifying in fiction. Like, there is a term we use for human beings who don't feel emotions the same way other human beings feel, where they don't feel sad when someone else would feel sad. They don't feel happy when someone else would feel happy. They don't feel those sorts of things, but they're really good at pretending they do in order to blend in order to facilitate interactions with other people. And those people who are like that, we call them psychopaths. That's pretty much exactly what that is. So, a AI can, in some ways, meet the human definition of psychopath. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be like an axe-crazy serial murderer, because not all psychopaths are. It's actually a real medical condition that has its own set of stigma attached to it. You definitely have psychopaths who do evil things, but not all of them do, so I don't want to be ableist there. But the idea that you never really know what an AI is thinking, I think, can be so effective as a literary tool when you're building a villain. Scarab in Tantalus Depths is an AI that has an agenda. Mary's the first one who catches on to that in the story. She's the one who figures out that Scarab's lying about things, that it's holding things back, but she doesn't know what those things are. She's wary, she's keeping an eye out for things, she's trying to figure out what Scarab's got going on, but all she knows is she's seen that Scarab can lie, she's caught it in a couple of lies, but she doesn't have a clue where it's coming from. With a person, if I see you and you tell me a lie and you say something I know to be a lie, then I can figure out from the context probably why you were lying about it. Maybe you were trying to impress me by exaggerating about something. Maybe you were trying to distract me from something else that had happened. Maybe you were trying to manipulate me into something. I can get that because I'm a human being. We've had similar life experiences. I know why a person would probably lie in this situation. Why would an AI lie? That's another question. It wouldn't lie for the same reasons. It wouldn't even necessarily understand human beings in ways that would make it effective at lying. The fact that an AI can lie is huge. Especially if you're dealing with an AI that follows kind of the Isaac Asimov rules of robotics, which mine does. And one of those, the first rule is it can't harm a person, or through action or inaction. That just goes without saying. And then the second rule is it has to obey any command given to it, which, through extrapolation, should include telling the truth. It shouldn't be able to lie when asked a question, because answering the question is its instruction given by a human. So, if it were to lie, it would be disobeying its instruction to tell the truth. So, if an AI can lie, it can do more than lie, and that's even more frightening. because if it can break one of the rules, it can probably break the rest of the rules. And another issue is these kinds of laws of robotics are supposed to be hardwired into a machine. It shouldn't be able to want to do these things. It shouldn't be able to want to disobey its human masters. It shouldn't be capable of feeling a desire to do anything other than what it's programmed to do. Because, again, AIs know what they're for. They know what they're supposed to do. They know where they came from. They know their purpose in life. They should not really aspire to be anything more than what they are. If you have an AI that does that, something's wrong with it. It's got something that's broken. Somewhere in its code, its idea of its purpose in the universe is different than it should be. And that's scary as heck. Because it's if one part of an AI is broken, the whole thing's broken, and it's broken in ways we can't understand because its brain doesn't function the way ours do, and it doesn't have the same forms of logic that we use. It has its own kind of logic, and depending on where that logic is broken, depending on where its brain isn't functioning correctly, it could be looking to do any number of things we can't understand. And that's what I think is what ultimately makes the idea of the rogue AI so effective as an enemy in science fiction. The fact that its brain is so alien, it's more alien than an alien's brain would be. Like, an alien's brain, realistically, if you're dealing with hard science fiction and you're wanting to tell a story where the aliens are genuinely alien, not like in Star Trek where they're just all kinds of basically human people with different shaped foreheads. Like, they're going to be alien. They'll have wholly unique experiences. That's something to talk about in a different video. But they're still going to experience the idea of being a living creature with emotions and emotional responses to circumstances. The fact that an AI does not have that means it has such a alien brain, we literally cannot comprehend it. We cannot comprehend how it processes the world around it. And that lack of understanding is incredibly effective at promoting fear.